来的是个人类。有胆量的，你出来吧！我来此的真正意图，这才是座山客老师。我要和你聊聊。
5大巨头可都在找他。
你认到我？
何必一来就厮杀呢？空间时刻在震颤，强的镇压之力。
Hello everyone, welcome to the Alrasta channel. Here, I will share spoilers for SwallowedStar episode 201. Remember, this is based on the novel, so it won't be 100% similar to the Donghua version. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. Continuing the story of SwallowedStar episode 200, Donghua version. After Luo Feng entered the gate of Ice Hell, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure bearing down on his body like a giant mountain crushing him. He flapped Shuwu's wings to stay afloat and hover in the air, gazing at the vast, boundless world of ice stretching out before him. The space around him shook occasionally as if slashed by trillions of invisible blades, making teleportation through God Country transmission impossible. Luo Feng realized that this was the heavy treasure that suppressed all forms of teleportation, just like the forbidden space inside his star tower. His mental energy range, which was usually very wide, could only cover a radius of 10,000 kilometers here due to the extraordinarily strong pressure. The only thing that relieved him was that he could still connect to the virtual universe, proving how powerful the technology was that it could function even within the heavy treasure. After walking more than 100,000 kilometers across snow and mountains without finding an end, Luo Feng finally attracted the attention of another inhabitant of Ice Hell. A soul-swallowing beast, a rare creature equivalent to a Mosha with a body 8 meters long, an even longer tail, and eyes glowing with black fire, began to hunt Luo Feng using its doppelganger. This beast had 2 terrifying natural abilities: soul-devouring movement and the ability to create doppelgangers to escape. It ambushed Luo Feng 3 times in a row, using its clones to test Luo Feng's strength. First with lightning-fast physical attacks, second with soul attacks, and third with illusions. However, all of these attacks failed completely because Luo Feng had a very strong will and consciousness, coupled with the beast god's power reaching a high level, allowing him to withstand soul attacks. Luo Feng easily killed every doppelganger that attacked him using his star diagram ball. Every time a doppelganger was destroyed into small fragments, they simply disappeared without regeneration or teleportation because the scattered divine body energy had a trace that immediately returned to the main body. Heavy Arrow, hiding inside Luo Feng's world ring, commented that the soul-swallowing beast was very cunning, using its doppelgangers repeatedly to test the strength of its opponent before deciding whether or not its real body would appear. If Luo Feng was too weak, its real body would come to kill him, but if he was too strong, it would carefully avoid him. Luo Feng had not yet shown his full strength or even used Fei Mo's poison, and he still had trump cards in store for more dangerous situations. Luo Feng was not alone in this dangerous mission because he carried 2 powerful warriors in his world ring: King Heavy Arrow and King Honed Heart, aka Lian Xin. Heavy Arrow carried an ancient purple bell, while Lian Xin was a highly gifted soul master. The combination of the 2 could easily change the outcome of the battle in difficult moments. Luo Feng had planned for the possibility of being captured from the beginning, so he left these 2 warriors behind to protect his earthly body, which had fatal weaknesses compared to the other immortal king warriors. His earthly body cannot burn divine body energy to drastically increase his power in battle, allowing him to defeat many opponents under normal circumstances, but putting him at a significant disadvantage when his enemies burn their divine body energy. That is why the presence of Heavy Arrow and Lian Xin as backup is crucial to cover this weakness. Luo Feng continued to walk patiently through the endless snow, leaving footprints that spanned more than 1,000 kilometers with each step. He believed there were other warriors nearby and was curious about the warnings from Venerable Green Doko and Talasha earlier, who had stated that Ice Hell was an extremely dangerous prison. However, exactly which parts were truly dangerous remained a mystery to him. Legend said that thousands of warriors had been trapped here for trillions of eras, forced to kill each other in endless darkness and madness. Luo Feng decided to patiently wait for the soul-swallowing beast to reveal its true form while continuing to explore this mysterious world of ice, searching for the real secret behind the terrible punishment that the universe venerable Doku had imposed on him. The soul-swallowing beast, which had repeatedly attacked Luo Feng using doppelgangers, finally made an important decision after observing Luo Feng's strength. Although its doppelgangers only possessed a fraction of its original power, Luo Feng killed them with ease without even unleashing his full abilities. The cunning beast concluded that Luo Feng was at least at the pinnacle Immortal King level, far stronger than expected. After careful calculation, the soul-swallowing beast decided to retreat and let the other prisoners deal with this dangerous newcomer first. The black silhouette disappeared from the snowfield, leaving Luo Feng to continue walking leisurely, enjoying the vast icy landscape. After walking nearly 10 million kilometers in a straight line without encountering anyone other than the soul-swallowing beast, Luo Feng finally saw a silhouette on the peak of a distant ice mountain. Standing 100,000 kilometers away from Luo Feng, a warrior of the Katu race, famous for its ferocity and cold-heartedness, stared back with piercing vertical eyes. The Katu race was one of the additional races within the demon race, known for its terrifying reputation. As soon as the two warriors saw each other, the Katu warrior immediately darted towards Luo Feng with clear, murderous intent radiating from his eyes full of madness. What surprised Luo Feng was that the warrior immediately burned his divine body energy even before knowing how strong his opponent was. Something that was very unreasonable because burning divine body energy took a long time to recover. The Katu warrior released a lock on space to prevent teleportation and launched a fierce attack with his bloody knife, but Luo Feng easily dodged repeatedly using his Shi Wu wings. Although the Katu warrior's strength increased dramatically after burning his divine body energy, his speed still couldn't match Luo Feng, who continued to dodge without difficulty. Realizing that his attacks could not touch Luo Feng at all, the Katu warrior suddenly stopped chasing and looked up at the sky, laughing loudly like a madman. His hoarse laughter echoed in all directions like shockwaves, filling the air with a chilling sound of despair. What surprised Luo Feng even more was that the warrior continued to burn his divine body relentlessly, even though he was no longer attacking. With a voice that echoed throughout Ice Hell, the Katu warrior recounted his tragic story. He was once a young genius who grew up to become a powerful immortal king, but was trapped in Ice Hell and spent more than 1 trillion eras in darkness, loneliness, and endless killing. His race and loved ones had probably long since forgotten him or died, with only a few friends possibly still alive. He could no longer bear the endless psychological torment and decided to end his suffering. The Katu warrior looked at the shocked Luo Feng and said that he wanted to die in a crazy battle. He explained that being in Ice Hell was the greatest torture, and unless someone had an absolute being in his race who would come and take him away personally, there was no hope of escape. With those last words, he blew up his own body, producing a huge explosion that shot in all directions. In various corners of Ice Hell, other prisoners who had been locked up for centuries reacted differently to this suicide. The soul-swallowing beast felt hurt at the loss of an old friend. The silhouette in the snow cave sighed about freedom, and the inhabitants of the magnificent palace in the Sea of Ice actually laughed joyfully because the more who died, the higher their chances of leaving. No one was surprised because suicide incidents like this had happened many times before. Luo Feng, who survived the explosion, began to understand the true horror of Ice Hell, which was not only about physical combat, but also about the war against loneliness and infinite time. Anyone who could reach the immortal level must have strong willpower and high self-confidence, but they could still be forced to commit suicide by tremendous psychological pressure. Races like the Katu lacked a virtual universe and were unable to make contact with the outside world, forcing them to endure endless suffering from constant killing and fighting. Even a strong warrior like him would be destroyed after being alone forever. Shocked by this incident, Luo Feng lost his patience for walking slowly and immediately flew across the sky at full speed. He continued to ponder whether he could survive in the same situation and concluded that he would definitely find a way to survive here. Finally, he found a giant transparent ice tablet with words in the demon race language engraved on it, revealing the terrible truth about the rules of Ice Hell created by the two universe venerables of the Doku race. The characters engraved on the tablet with extraordinary divine power explain the only chance of survival for all prisoners, The slaughter system. Since the last slaughter, Ice Hell has held 12,000 immortal warriors from various demon races under its control, each with an identification tag. The rules are extremely cruel. Anyone who can collect 10,000 tags will be allowed to leave Ice Hell safely, while those who fail will be killed. Only one of the 12,000 prisoners can come out alive. Venerable Green Dao Ko created this cruel system by offering a glimmer of false hope while taking away all other opportunities, forcing powerful warriors who refuse to surrender to fate to continue fighting and killing each other in an endless cycle of slaughter. This is what caused the madness, repeated failures, and ultimately suicide experienced by the Katu race warriors before. While Luo Feng was still standing in front of the ice tablet digesting this terrifying information, a giant transparent creature 80 meters tall suddenly leaped out of the snow 70,000 kilometers away. This creature from the Kangjing clan was one of the mutated plant lifeforms, its body covered with glass-like transparent leaves with thick vines holding long black chains. Unlike the soul-swallowing beast, which chose to retreat, this creature dared to attack because it desperately wanted Luo Feng's awareness helmet connector, which could connect it to the virtual universe. For the prisoners of Ice Hell, who had no access to the outside world, the ability to connect to the virtual universe was a precious treasure because it could ease their torturous loneliness. The creature immediately teleported behind Luo Feng and launched a brutal attack with its black chains, which twisted like a snake dancing ferociously. Luo Feng easily dodged the chain attack, which fell and hit the snowfield, creating a deep ravine, while the ice tablet remained intact, proving the strength of the material. The transparent creature gave its best by swinging the chain to its maximum speed, creating countless illusions in the air. However, Luo Feng responded by releasing 6 black balls from the star diagram that triggered the laws of the universe, bringing forth a projection of the beast god several hundred meters long that attacked with its claws. Then the beast god's claws destroyed the black chain and struck the creature's body. The creature tried to teleport away to avoid it, but Luo Feng activated the space lock band, cutting off the creature's transparent arms with Shu Wu's wings. Finally, Luo Feng thrust his claws into the enemy's body and injected 6 balls coated with deadly Fei Mo poison, destroying nearly half of the plant creature's divine body in an instant. With half of its divine body destroyed and only able to use 1/10 of its normal strength, the Kangjing clan creature realized it was no match for Luo Feng and had no chance of escape because its speed was much slower. It admitted defeat, but warned that almost no Ice Hell prisoners feared death, and it would destroy itself if forced without a choice. Luo Feng offered to spare him if he answered his questions honestly. The creature explained that he was a plant life form that had mutated due to this Ice Hell prison. He revealed the reason why Ice Hell prisoners attacked strangers without knowing their strength first. After being here for too long, they lost their vigilance to a certain extent, even craving death. There was no disadvantage to fighting because the conditions in Ice Hell were very different from the outside world. The transparent creature finally revealed the real motivation behind his reckless attack on Luo Feng. He desperately wanted Luo Feng's connector device, which allowed access to the virtual universe. Staring at Luo Feng, it explained how luxurious it was to enter the virtual world for prisoners who had been struggling between life and death for countless eras with no end in sight. Loneliness was the greatest torment in Ice Hell, far exceeding physical combat. Most of the trapped creatures did have a strong will to survive, but they had lost their caution after being here for too long. There were extremely powerful and special beings in Ice Hell who were able to survive indefinitely, while the pinnacle Immortal King seemed to have no chance of escape and continued to fight because he would rather not give up. The ability to sense the outside world through the virtual universe was an unimaginable luxury for those trapped in this eternal prison. Luo Feng nodded with deep understanding after hearing the Kangjing clan creature's confession about how desperate the prisoners were to access the virtual universe. He himself often used the virtual universe to meet his family while adventuring, experiencing a perfect reality as if they were truly together. The transparent creature suddenly asked if Luo Feng had a connector device and was willing to do anything if given the chance to connect to the virtual world and contact the outside world. However, Luo Feng firmly shook his head and said he didn't have one, leaving the creature in total despair. Luo Feng showed no empathy because he knew that if the other prisoners found out he had a connector device, he would become the target of all the warriors in Ice Hell. He then asked if the prisoners believed they could really get out if they collected 10,000 tags, and the creature replied that Venerable Green Duko had said so publicly, and they had no choice but to believe him despite their doubts. The Kang Jing clan creature explained that the prisoners would do anything for that small glimmer of hope. Murder, stabbing in the back, intrigue, and even willing to perish together. Since the Infinite Era, 860 warriors had survived the massacre, which meant that 11,000 others had died. The survivors consisted of a majority of Pinnacle Immortal Kings and high-level Limit Immortal Kings, who could only hide, about 800 Pinnacle Immortal Kings who dared to fight, 50 Limit Immortal Kings, 10 who were almost as strong as Invincible Immortal Kings, and 5 true Invincible Immortal Kings. The creature showed a large ice tablet containing the rankings of all warriors in Ice Hell, created by Skywolf, one of the Invincible Immortal Kings, because they were too lonely and bored. So rankings became one of the few things that interested them. Although it was difficult to determine the definite winner when two warriors of equal strength fought, Skywolf's rankings were credible because they were based on all the battles that had taken place in Ice Hell. After reading the ranking tablet, Luo Feng gained a clear picture of the structure of Ice Hell, which was divided into 5 districts. The Ice Sea in the center, as well as East, West, North, and South Ice Hell. The 5 Invincible Immortal Kings each had their own palaces and would only fight each other under unusual circumstances. 3 of the 5 Invincible Immortal Kings were special beings whose physical constitutions were far superior, making the strongest Pinnacle Immortal King among them 20 million times stronger than a normal World Master. The other 2 Invincible Immortal Kings were from the Xi'an clan, which was 10 times stronger than the human race at the same level, and Skywolf from the Royal Demon race, which was 6 times stronger. Luo Feng sighed, realizing that the 3 special beings had all managed to become invincible, proving their superiority, while the relatively weak constitution of the human race made it more difficult to reach that level, even though some of the highest beings that shook the universe came from the human race. Luo Feng built an underground dwelling in the snow near the Sea of Ice to train for a while. He realized that each Invincible Immortal King was as strong as Master Zhen Yan, making him not yet capable enough to collect 10,000 tags to leave. However, unlike the other prisoners who were desperate to escape, Luo Feng viewed Ice Hell as a golden opportunity to strengthen himself. He planned to defeat the powerful warriors one by one before escaping and did not care whether Venerable Green Doko intended to let him go or not, because he always had the last resort of calling his master, the Primal Chaos City Leader, who would make the 2 universe venerables of the Doko race lose everything if they dared to play with him. With his eyes closed and his mind clear, Luo Feng shut himself off to practice while all the other prisoners were busy fighting their way out, treating this terrible prison as his personal training ground. Luo Feng's footprints, which spanned more than 1,000 kilometers, finally caught the attention of a 3-meter-tall red creature covered in bony spurs and wearing a dark red mask. He was King Whitebone, one of the 10 Limit Immortal Kings who ranked 11th in Ice Hell. His mastery of the Law of Fire engulfed an area of 10,000 square kilometers in flames, even though the rapidly boiling lake water froze back into snow under the influence of Ice Hell as if nothing had happened. King Whitebone was curious about the newcomer's carelessness in not erasing his tracks, wondering if it was confidence or stupidity. He followed the tracks until he reached the coast of the Sea of Ice and found Luo Feng floating in the air with his silver wings spread. Madness filled King Whitebone as he stared at the human before him. Luo Feng, who already knew his opponent's identity from the ranking tablet, looked down calmly. The feeling of battle and the intent to kill began to permeate the air as the 2 powerful warriors prepared for an inevitable clash. On the other hand, the endless battle during the Infinite Era in Ice Hell created 2 groups of prisoners with different mentalities. Lowly creatures such as the Kang Jing clan and Katu clan lost hope and even wanted to kill themselves because they couldn't stand the psychological pressure. However, powerful creatures such as the soul-swallowing beast had no desire to die at all and still persevered tenaciously. The most different were the 10 Limit Immortal Kings, who basically ruled every part of Ice Hell together with the 5 Invincible Immortal Kings. They were all full of burning ambition. Although still disadvantaged compared to the 5 Invincible Immortal Kings, they believed it was still possible to catch up and escape from this terrible prison. That was why they fought excessively to continue improving themselves, never giving in to despair. Back to Luo Feng, the hostile king. Whitebone stared at Luo Feng with eyes full of madness, pleased that this newcomer did not flee like the other prisoners. Luo Feng confidently declared that he would not run if he was not defeated, but would run if he was indeed defeated. King Whitebone immediately locked the space to prevent teleportation and shot like a beam of light towards Luo Feng. Luo Feng flapped Shuwu's wings to dodge while throwing 8 black balls that triggered the law and summoned ferocious beast gods to attack. A violent clash ensued, creating shockwaves that tore through the surrounding area. After seeing Luo Feng's strength, King Whitebone smiled and said that this human was qualified to fight him. With a serious look, his body changed dramatically. His bones contracted, his height increased, and his color changed from red to silvery white, covered in bone armor. Luo Feng used his strong willpower, making his beast god projection more real and dangerous as it attacked King Whitebone. However, King Whitebone stood confidently and only swung his right claw, which was equipped with a pair of gloves. Although King Whitebone only had one treasure with his high status, after countless life-and-death battles and immeasurable pressure over a long era, he was able to utilize those gloves perfectly. His claws became countless ghosts that carried out continuous attacks, finally cracking the beast god's tail and destroying the 8 black balls in a brutal battle. Luo Feng was stunned to see how powerful King Whitebone was, whose strength was on par with King Seven's sword. After defeating the beast god's projection, King Whitebone immediately flew towards Luo Feng to kill him. However, Luo Feng quickly flapped his wings and fled, while shouting his admiration for King Whitebone's strength, acknowledging that he was not his opponent at this time and would fight another day. His voice reached King Whitebone when he was already flying very far away, utilizing the superior speed of his Shiwu wings. King Whitebone stopped midway and growled, realizing that this human was indeed very fast, even faster than the 5 invincible immortal kings. He concluded that there would be other superpowers in Ice Hell and felt happy that such newcomers would bring more fun and entertainment to the boring prison. After escaping the range of the space lock, Luo Feng built a new underground dwelling deep in the snow of Eastern Ice Hell. While drinking wine, Luo Feng reflected that he had underestimated the creatures in Ice Hell. He thought they weren't that strong because they were confined in a limited space and didn't have many treasures, but he was completely wrong. These prisoners were under much greater pressure, forcing them to improve themselves no matter what. If they obtained a treasure, they would study it thoroughly and utilize it perfectly, making one treasure equal to the power of 10 treasures if used correctly. King Whitebone was a perfect example. His physique was hardly that of a typical warrior, but with one treasure that perfectly suited his claws and the flawless coordination between his claws and body, using a secret technique he had created himself, his power became terrifying. Luo Feng realized his mistake. Since creating the first move of the Bright Moon policy, he had not learned any new secret techniques. He finally understood how important it was to have a series of secret techniques that matched his treasures and decided to create a special technique using the star diagram, the mental master weapon that suited him best. Luo Feng began intensive training in his underground residence while connected to the virtual universe, experimenting with new movements over and over again. News of Luo Feng's battle against King Whitebone spread quickly throughout Ice Hell. Eyewitnesses who saw the energy waves from the battle tried to recount what they had seen, but many prisoners were skeptical, especially about the claim that Luo Feng could teleport 10 times faster than King Whitebone and was the fastest in Ice Hell, even faster than the 5 invincible immortal kings. They argued that this was unreasonable because the 3 invincible immortal kings were special beings with extraordinary abilities. However, everything changed when King Whitebone himself praised the human and confirmed his extraordinary speed. The story became much more convincing because King Whitebone would not lie, given how proud he was. 10 years later, Skywolf posted the latest version of the Ice Hell rankings and placed the new human entrant at number 18 after only 3 battles. New rumors began to circulate that were far more dangerous for Luo Feng. He must have a connector device to connect to the virtual universe. The logic was very convincing. He was the only human in Ice Hell and could definitely connect to the virtual universe alone, plus his high status and ability to control slaves. For beings who had suffered loneliness for an infinite era, access to the virtual universe and the connector device was a very tempting treasure. Although they were initially patient thanks to the long time spent here, eventually some beings began to search for Luo Feng personally. However, only a small number actually had the guts to challenge him because they knew how powerful he was. And what was even more surprising was that almost no one could find his whereabouts. They were all annoyed because, in theory, it should have been easy to use divine power to find him in Ice Hell, but they did not know that Luo Feng had a highly advanced micro-detector worth tens of billions of Hun Yuan that could completely hide his whereabouts. In the magnificent palace, at the peak of the northern Ice Hell mountain, Silver Eye, one of the 5 invincible immortal kings who ranked second, sat on the throne with giant, narrow eyes that were closed most of the time. If he opened his eyes and saw someone, that creature would be instantly destroyed. His 2 servants reported that no one had seen the human with the connector device directly, but it was very possible that he had it. Silver Eye, who was very interested in the prospect of obtaining the connector device to ease his loneliness, decided to take matters into his own hands and search for Luo Feng. Although he was ranked second, it was difficult to say which of the 5 invincible immortal kings was the strongest because they focused on occupying their respective districts. Silver Eye was skilled in the laws of time and was a special being, rendering Luo Feng's speed meaningless in the face of his time pause ability. He left the palace confident that Luo Feng would not be able to leave, but to the surprise of all beings in Ice Hell, even Silver Eye could not find the human. While the entire Ice Hell searched for him, Luo Feng sat cross-legged in his secret cave in East Ice Hell with his microdetector in stealth mode at all times. His mind was connected to the virtual universe where he continued to practice in the field of practice. He was studying the control of the Beast God technique that breathed fire while controlling 160 sealed star balls with intricate engravings floating around him. The spheres flew under his control into tens of thousands of golden threads, conjuring a 1,000-meter-long projection of the Beast God in the sky. Unlike Shi Luo Duo's Beast God Soldier, which gradually made the entire projection real, Luo Feng's creation appeared vague and blurry except for its tail. Luo Feng explained that Shi Luo Duo had never seen the original Beast God statue, so he had to enhance the entire projection while he had it, and had studied every engraving on the tail for 100 years with the body of the golden-horned behemoth, allowing him to focus all his mental power in one place. In the battle simulation in the virtual universe, Luo Feng's Beast God's tail struck the scorpion beast right on the head at lightning speed, causing it to explode and turn to dust. Luo Feng cheered happily because he had finally succeeded in completing his new technique. Suddenly, a person in a golden robe appeared in the sky, the primal Chaos City leader who came directly to the training ground, unlike when Luo Feng created the Bright Moon technique and had to go to the Thunder Palace. The master praised that Luo Feng's secret move to control his mental master weapon was now as good as his sword movements. However, he reminded him that real battles were different from battles in the virtual universe and ordered Luo Feng to fight 10 powerful warriors virtually before coming to see him again. After Luo Feng respectfully left the virtual universe, Gui Yi shook his head with concern. He thought that warrior melee fighters with mental masters were different. And even though Luo Feng was studying the way of the Beast God, he was not concentrating on a single technique like every other powerful person did. The master believed that Luo Feng should not try to master both techniques at once, and that only after being defeated would he learn from his mistakes. Luo Feng stood joyfully deep within his hidden cave, buried in the snow of East Ice Hell, after finally succeeding in creating the first step of his new secret technique following 100 years of arduous training. King Heavy Arrow and Lian Xin, who were hiding in his world ring, congratulated him and hoped their master could kill more creatures to collect 10,000 tags. However, Luo Feng instead asked for advice on the right name for his new series of moves. Lian Xin suggested Hellstar because they were in Ice Hell. Heavy Arrow rejected it because Ice Hell was only a temporary place and suggested the more powerful Beast God, even though it sounded arrogant, indicating Luo Feng's goal of reaching the Beast God level. However, Luo Feng kept shaking his head because he was not satisfied with any of the suggested names. After contemplating many options, Luo Feng finally chose a simple and ordinary name that met his criteria: 10,000 Star Sermon Map. This name represented his grand ambition. The Star Tower only had 10,000 sealed stars, and according to Zuo Shanqi, Luo Feng could currently only control 10 of them. But with this name, he expressed his determination to control all the sealed stars. The word sermon reflected that his secret movements revealed the path of his training. The first technique was named Lightning Fast Striking Star, reflecting its extraordinary speed. It took only 100 years to create this technique, much faster than the 1,000 years spent on Galaxy on the Sky, which contained the first technique, Bright Moon. There were two reasons. First, Luo Feng was now at a higher level. Second, this movement originated from the first volume of Beast God's 7 Kills, combined with the Beast God's conception, plus more experience gained during battle. Luo Feng brought his 2 followers back to the ring and decided to leave the cave, but suddenly stopped at the exit, frowning. He realized that the Primal Chaos City leader had only asked to see him after 10 battles without a word of praise, which meant that the master was not satisfied with the moves created for the Mental Master weapon. Luo Feng immediately found the reason. Powerful warriors needed to focus on one move, not divide their focus into 2. Gui Yi clearly wanted Luo Feng to follow the path of a warrior melee fighter, not a mental master. But Luo Feng was confused because he had strong spiritual power and high amplitude, which were very suitable for the path of a mental master, and his master must have known this. On the other hand, Zuo Shanqi, one of the most powerful beings in the universe, had left the Star Tower, the most powerful mental master weapon, which would be wasted if not studied. After careful consideration, Luo Feng decided to study both at the same time, and would choose if there were secrets he didn't know later. Luo Feng, who had been in hiding for 100 years, finally came out and flew across the entire eastern Ice Hell region, but found no opponents. He realized that powerful beings usually hid themselves and needed special methods to bring them out. Standing on the vast sea of ice, Luo Feng suddenly became sharp and shouted, "Break!" while plunging his mental power into the ice. The power that could twist reinforced concrete when he first awoke could now destroy stars without effort. All the ice within tens of thousands of square meters vanished instantly, and the vibrations caused the distant ice to crack as if crushed under the weight of a beast. Waves of energy spread everywhere, and powerful beings living tens of millions of kilometers away felt it. They realized that it was the human being sought by the 10 limit immortal kings and 5 invincible immortal kings. But no one dared to appear because they knew he was highly ranked and was the fastest in Ice Hell. In the northern Ice Hell, Silver Eye, who sat like a statue on his throne, received a report from his servants that they still could not find the human being who had completely disappeared since the battle with King Whitebone. Meanwhile, in the Ice Sea, Luo Feng stood in the sky for a long time without finding anyone appearing. He couldn't believe that no one would appear and continued to bombard the ice with his mental power repeatedly. The energy waves that had been spreading slowly faded and disappeared, causing many powerful beings who were aware of the situation to remain hidden because they feared the reputation of Luo Feng. However, it was only after Luo Feng struck the ice for the 3rd time with a tremendous explosion that shook the entire area that an opponent finally accepted the challenge and dared to show himself. Luo Feng smiled because he would finally have the opportunity to test his new technique, which he had trained for 100 years in a real battle. So what happens next? Let's wait and see in the next video, guys. Okay, thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget to support this channel with likes, subscribe, and comments. That's all from me. Bye.